you can really make a lot of money if you strategize and you know, like find your niche and find ways to do it. I just snowballed that into different ways, different practices, different strategies to really fast track that.
So you want to make an impact. You're thinking about starting a business, sharing your voice. How do women do it that handle motherhood, family, and still chase after those dreams? Well, listen each week as we dive into the stories of women who know. This is Call Me CEO. Hey everyone, on today's episode, we are speaking with Alexandra Nolan, who is talking to us about how you can be an entrepreneur today. It doesn't have to be conventional. In fact, she wrote a book about it, The Unconventional Entrepreneur, where she takes us through her journey of creating and successfully morphing her businesses into what she has today. She's done a brick and mortar boutique. She has done an online boutique where she has worked with brands and sponsors, and she's also created a business where she is now sharing her tips and tools of how you too can earn money from home and live a life that you love as an unconventional entrepreneur. Let's dive in. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Call Me CEO. This is your host, Camille Walker, and today we have the honor of having Alexandra Nolan with us, who is the author of The Unconventional Entrepreneur. And today we're going to talk about taking a risk and how you are never too old to reach for your goals through a personal story that we're going to be hearing about from Alexandra. Thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so please tell our audience about yourself and a bit of your journey, how you got started and where you are now.
Okay, it is a whirlwind, so I will hit the highlight points because it could easily take hours. Basically, so when I graduated college, it was in 2008. So for those of you who have graduated in 2008, you know there was a huge crash. I, through college, was working as a makeup artist and at a bar, and then going to college. So when I graduated, I couldn't get a job. And so I just continued on, working at a bar and doing makeup with a college degree, which, it was that feeling, when you're like, yes, I'm ready to become an adult. And then all of a sudden it's like,
yes.
Well, no, I'm just going to keep doing what I was doing in high school and college. But anyway, so one of my customers actually worked for a massive corporation, international paper. And by the time I was 26, she got me into the corporate world and I was working there. Fabulous, wonderful, loved it. But as you probably know, you can take direction well and work your way up, especially if you have drive in any setting, a corporate world. But there's always this internal pull of like, this isn't me. Like, am I going to be doing this forever? So I left and started on my journey as an entrepreneur, and I launched a boutique in 2012. That was my first step into a bunch of different things. I've since sold the boutique and, blog journey book. It just kind of, it snowballed, snowball effect.
Yeah, I love that. So was this a brick and mortar boutique or was this an online boutique, or talk us through that? What was that exactly?
So it's crazy how each journey in my career or as an entrepreneur has led to the next thing. It started as a brick and mortar. And I left the corporate world. It was crazy. I was so impulsive back then. I had the idea that I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to open up a makeup / like a Sephora / clothing store. I forgot I had a makeup line at the time. When I was in corporate America, I started my own makeup line, because I was like, I kind of want to be an entrepreneur. And I did it on the side. And that was so I had a small little side business. It was kind of like, doing home parties and stuff like that. So I decided, well, I'm going to take my makeup line and make it a brick and mortar. But, I was like, I've got to sell a crap ton of makeup to pay the bills because there's a lot of overhead. So I decided to make it a clothing store / makeup line. And I had this idea, and within 2 weeks, I had quit my job. And then 2 weeks after that, I put in my 2 weeks notice. 2 weeks after that, we had the store completely open. So from the moment that I had the light bulb go off, to the moment I walked into a brand new store that we had set up. It was, about a month. So it was pretty crazy. And
Wow.
then we sold online too. So that's kind of how I came into the influencer world. I started selling online. I didn't have money to market, so I started a blog, and it was basically me taking selfies in the photo, like in the mirror, like of myself with clothes on, because
Hmm.
it was just me and my dog. That I owned the store. I was a single woman. I would bring my dog up to work, and we would sit there all day, 7 days a week. I didn't have employees. It was the beginning of the grueling part of being your own boss. And so I started taking photos. You know, People started reading the blog, they started following, and I thought, well, let me get an Instagram account too. So I started an Instagram account. People started following that. Before I knew it, other brands were reaching out, and they were clothing brands, and they were like, can we be featured on your blog? And at first I'm like, no, I'm not going to cannibalize my own business. I'm trying to
Hmm.
grow my online thing. But then I realized really quickly when the brands started, coming like once a month, then once a week, then several times a week, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a different revenue stream. So I just Googled,
Yeah.
like I did everything else, to learn how to do this. And I completely segued from the Ivory Closet blog, which was my blog, which was my store, Ivory Closet, into City Chic Living. Just completely branded it, separated it off, and just kind of started that way. And it has it's grown into a bunch of different things since then.
That's amazing. I love, if you're listening to this right now, I think that there are a lot of parallels to things that happened in 2008 to things that are now happening today. And there's always going to be something new, a new medium, a messy middle where you can start with something as a solopreneur where it's just you and it can grow into something big. Because I look at the year 2008 with the year 2020, and I think there's a market crash. Something big happened. The world stopped. Everyone's pivoting and looking, where am I now and where could I be? As well as a change in social media and the atmosphere and what does that look like? And now, where before it was blogging, the beginning of starting to post on Instagram, now it's short-term video and TikTok and the reels and the shorts. And if you're listening to this right now and thinking, man, I really should have started back then, you are in a perfect spot to start something that could grow into something like you have done,
Yeah.
where it's that messy middle of like, it just started with me. But I'm looking at new people that are like the young blood, where like
Yeah.
you and I have done this for more than a decade.
Right.
And I'm like, oh yeah, that was me. Like I was picking up the phone and taking selfies, and I didn't know what I was doing. It was messy, but like, look at what it became a decade later. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, could this even work for me? Could I start something new? Just me? Yes, you can. And I love that your story illustrates that, where it's like, there was a lot of messy middle, but even listening to it, I'm like, how the heck did you get into a physical building? Like what? And like, what happened to that building when you were like blogging? And I mean, there seems like there's pieces of this. So tell us a little bit more about that. How did you decide to lean more into the online more than, or what happened with that building? Did you keep trying to facilitate that?
Yeah. So I had, yeah, I like you're talking about building the business, or like a
No, the
brick and
physical
mortar,
building.
a brick and mortar building.
Yes.
Okay.
The brick and mortar building. Yes.
So
Sorry.
yeah.
That's confusing.
I was about to say, because there's so many different ways I can go with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the building, oh gosh, this is the crazy part of the story. And I actually write about it in my book. And I would not suggest this to anyone, but when I had this crazy idea that I wanted to become an entrepreneur, and I wanted to have this store, I'm just going to throw numbers out there. I had $10,000 to my name. That was like everything in savings that I'd saved from high school through college, like that's all I had, which is a lot of money. At the age of 26, obviously, like that's a lot I'd saved. I mean, and granted, it was from 14 all the way up to, 26. But let me just tell you, because I started franchising my stores, so I was helping other women open stores at some point. And I wouldn't even suggest starting, like the very, very dirt ground minimum you need to start a boutique is 50,000. So that just gives you an idea. I had a small 1,000 square foot store actually isn't very small, but I had a store. And if you can imagine, after we had to go in, it was an old tan and go. So we had to come in ourselves, and me and my sister went in and knocked walls down with axes. She had just started her own business as a construction. She's like a contractor, general contractor.
Cool.
So she's like, "Oh, you'll be my first job." So she comes in, and we've got axes, and we're knocking down tanning stalls and pulling up old, the terrible carpet. It's like black with neon confetti. We had to tear all that up. It was weird. We had to tear it all up, redo all of it. So that took almost half of everything. Then I had to get fixtures, which, if you can imagine, I had four-way racks. It has four arms on it that you'll see like in a Macy's or something. It's like a rack that holds clothes. I had two of those. So that's all I had in the middle of my store. This big with two little racks, and me and my little podium stand, and then a few tables that I had pulled from my apartment, and a couch that I had at my apartment. So I didn't have any.
Wow.
I had a bed left at my apartment. So yeah, that's how that kind of happened. I would never recommend that. You really need a lot more money. I think the only reason it's things have just kind of worked out because of strategic, like, marketing strategies that I kind of pulled. The only reason it worked out was because I knew this. I knew that location was the location. It was on an island. There was no store on that island. There were tons of homes on the island. There were restaurants, but there was not a store. And there was a grocery store, but there wasn't.
Wow.
So I knew in my head, if I could get it going and just keep putting all the money I make in inventory back into the store and grow it and grow it and grow it, people are going to come, unless they want to leave the island. And the closest clothing store from there is like 15 minutes.
So what island? Where are we?
We're in Memphis,
in the world.
We're in Memphis, Tennessee. There's an island called Mud Island off, and Harbor Town is the little town. So yeah, I mean, it's weird. It's right in the Mississippi River.
Cool. So how did that line up with you working with sponsors and building your brand online?
Yeah. So basically, because I was taking pictures and clothes and, writing my little blog on the pictures, and then also posting, you'll probably remember this. Remember when Facebook business basically didn't have an algorithm, and it it was, the early days of Facebook business. So whatever you posted, people could see, and they could comment sold, and people were making tons of money, especially boutiques.
Yeah.
I mean, I was making, so it was before I even had an online store. I was selling everything through Facebook, writing about it on my blog, linking the blog to Facebook, and people were buying and reading and all of that. So it kind of segued into this whole thing. My first strategy was to get followers to buy my clothes. That was just, I was a one track mind. And then whenever it just expanded and expanded, and I started having brands reach out, and they, at first they were like other small businesses, and so when I started working with them, then other larger brands started noticing, and it just kind of went from there.
Oh, that's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about your personal life. I know that you had mentioned this to me before we started the call, and that is very much interwoven into the trial and error of building your business and what was going on behind the scenes. Can you tell us a little bit more about, first of all, how you were able to keep it together and have your mind, you're just like, I'm doing this. I'm going to go build this store. I'm going to start there's so much strategy there, but I know that behind the scenes too, there was a lot of heartache as well. Can you talk us through where you were in that place?
Absolutely. So when I started all of this, I was 26. I was unmarried, had no kids. And in the middle of this, so once I had my first store, let's see, I had it for about 4 years. And then I ended up getting married. So I ended up in that time meeting someone. And truth be told, in that time, 2 years after I started the store, meeting someone, we were together for a year, got pregnant, was not married, had the baby, got married 6 months later, and then got pregnant about a year after that, after we were married, with my second child. And I talk about this in the book, and I'm not like, my ex-husband and I are very good friends. I've remarried. He's he and my husband are friends. I mean, we're not like hanging out doing barbecues, but he's asked to come over and use the pool on a weekend when we were out of town, and we were like, yeah, so I mean, we help each other out a lot. So, but during that time, we both had a hand in what was the demise of our marriage, but I think my big hand was I was so focused on my dream as an entrepreneur. I used to say that I was going to build this big empire, and I had all these aspirations of having like a high-rise office building in Chicago and like all this stuff, and just have all of these franchises, because I ended up franchising after we got married, and I can tell you more about that. But as far as the heartache goes, I would like he would get home and I would stay at the shops until like 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. Or when I would be home, same thing in my office, just Googling, researching, YouTubing, watching all the ways to market, watching what other people are doing, or I would be leaving to go to markets and staying for a week at a time. And sometimes he would come, sometimes he wouldn't. So I think I was so into work that I just, we just became strangers in our own home. I would come home, and go straight back to work, even if I even came home before he went to bed. And I think maybe he just was lonely and needed a friend, and not saying all that. There was no infidelity or anything. I just think that like he just was like, I'm just at this house, and my wife's not here, and sometimes the kids would be up at work with me, and then I would come drop them off and go back to work. And so like that really is kind of how that all happened. That's really the gist of it. And so we ended up splitting. That was just like I did with the business. I was like, this is going to be fine, new path. It's better for the family. It's better for all of us. I was wrong. It was way harder than I thought it would be. I almost lost my home. I had to get on, I have always just made things work financially. It's just, it's like, oh, I need an extra couple hundred. Well, I'll just go clean a house or work harder or take a job over here. I've just always made things work. And I just thought that was the way it would be. And I kept the house, and it just wasn't. So I ended up getting on, had to get on government help, and to like WIC to help take care of the kids, feed the kids, keep my house. It was very humbling. It was a hard time. There's nothing to be embarrassed of, but I was, because it wasn't ever in my plan, and then,
Sure.
and it's like file bankruptcy or take help from the government. My mother was like, you paid taxes in since you were 14. That's what it's for. It's for if you come on hard times. So went through all of that. I'm happy to say within about a year after having to get government assistance, I was able to turn things around. They let you stay on it for like 5 years, but of course I won't take advantage. So got off of it, was happy, was glad it was there. I'm an advocate for that for women. Hey, know what's there for you, especially if you're working hard and paying back into the government. But it was hard times. It was hard time. I know that was a long story. I was trying not to drag it on, but it was tough. I literally almost lost it all, physically and mentally. It was a strain. So
yeah. Thank you for being so vulnerable. I feel like that's something that a lot of people can relate to. And also the fear of failure is what holds us back of, oh, what if something like that did happen? And I love that you can speak to that of saying, I've been there and I was able to overcome.
Yes.
And so what advice would you give to someone who maybe is in a place like that of feeling desperate or feeling like they won't be able to get out, or maybe just having that fear of launching, of even starting? What advice would you give to either of those people?
Well, I will say this, if you are in a position like I just described, one of the biggest things, and I've always prided myself on not giving what anybody else thinks,
Yeah.
But I have always been successful up until that point. In my head, I kept thinking I'm always reaching the new rank on the ladder. Like I'm always climbing. I hadn't been knocked down to the bottom, and so ever. So I didn't care what people thought until I got knocked down off the stool that I was like, oh, I'm just going to keep going. Failure wasn't even a thought until that point. I've started feeling like a huge failure, especially as a mother, as a businesswoman, as a person. I was like, as a wife, I was like, how could I have let this get to this point? And so the hardest part was, like I just said, having to get assistance, having to reach out, having to ask for help. I had never done that before from family, from anybody. Like I've never leaned on anybody. And at this point in my life, I literally, didn't have my husband and I had children I had to take care of. Not, you know, that you're going to start having this feeling of wonder, like, worried about what other people think. If you get to that point, you're going to you will humble yourself very fast. You can either sit and, like basically part of me wanted to sit in my room in the dark and be like, I never want to come out and just let everything crumble around you. Or you can literally like pick yourself up, walk out that door and start reaching out and asking people for help. And you will feel like, I can't even describe the feeling. It's the worst feeling for me because I'm just like, but like needing to lean on other people and worrying what people are going to think and being so, I guess, vulnerable. That's the word, being extremely vulnerable. But you got to do it. And I will tell you in that moment, you will find out who is there for you and cares for you and who is not. And you will build some relationships, but you've got to be able to do it and be able to figure out what your options are, because the only other way, if you don't do that, is to lose everything that you have. I mean, anytime in situations when I'm like that, I'm like, what are my options? It's to keep my pride and lose everything I have, or become extremely vulnerable, humble myself and push myself out there and be like, hey, I need help. My mindset changed a lot after that. Even like, from a business standpoint, but even from a mental standpoint, it's okay. It's okay to reach out and lean on those people.
Yeah. How do you think you were able to cross over into that acceptance of needing help? Was there someone that helped you through that? Was there guidance that you were given, or how were you able, as a very successful entrepreneurial person, like, as you're saying, that was like a nightmare for you to be like, no, I've always been successful. So how did you get to that place of being able to cross over?
It was a do or die. So like, just for instance, and I hate, like, part of me is scared to tell this story only because in the day and age that we're in, people judge so much and they're going to be like, oh, well, how dare her? Or maybe there are people that were in my situation that maybe still are and they, feel some sort of way about this. But for instance, like, when I got on WIC, that is, women, infant, children care, like they give you these coupon things to help feed your children. Because when I got a divorce, my youngest was 6 months old. So formula is expensive, ladies that have children.
So expensive.
And it's even more now.
And diapers and everything else. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. So, so when I went to these grocery stores, at first, like, I didn't, like, now I think they have debit cards, which I wanted to advocate for. I was like, I want to advocate for this in my city, because you would go and they're like these checks and each one has to be scanned and rung up separately. So there's like 10 of them. So they're doing 10 different transactions plus extra what you're buying. The line's super long behind you. People are like, like changing lines, just, oh my God, when's she going to be done? What is she doing? Like, no one knew my situation. I can't tell you how many times I fought back tears in the grocery store. I would never even go to my local grocery store. After I figured out that was the process, I was afraid I'd run into someone that I knew and they would be like, what are you doing? And then me have to like explain the whole story and cry in front of everybody. And then people will start feeling bad for me. And that's the worst thing. I never want anybody to feel bad for me. So it literally was a do or die. Like, no one wants to do that, right? So I could have not done it, but then I could have not fed my children. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's almost
you have to.
Yeah, you just have to. So no one really helped me through it. I just was like, you know what? You're going to have to just put that tail between your legs and just do it. And that also motivated me, though, to try to get out of that situation as quickly as possible. That's when I started like just branching out into all these different things to try to grow the business rapidly and get out of that situation.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I love that answer. I mean, it sounds very much like, and by the way, why do they make it so painful? Now with the debit cards, I'm like, you're already in a place of like needing the help and like not wanting to feel other and like look down upon. And, oh, by the way, you have to wait in line for hours upon hours. Like that just seems horrible. I actually have a friend who is in a very similar situation now, recently divorced. And she said, I just found out I make $100 too much to get WIC now. I'm like, what? There's got to be something we can do. And she's like, yeah, I'm $100 too much. And I'm like, that's like the price of 5 gallons of milk right now. Like,
Yeah.
let's get serious. This
Right.
is crazy.
It's a matter of $100 too much, but the WIC can give you like $400 worth of food. So if you think of the trade-off, yeah, she makes
Mhm.
$100 so she can try to feed her family on 100. Or if the trade-off is 100 and they're going to give you 400, just give her 300. Like do the trade-off of it.
Right.
Because I mean, it's not apples to apples, and it can really mean a lot. I mean, it can help a family a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds like through this process, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't read your book yet. I'm really looking forward to it. But is this how you were able to develop the practices of the unconventional entrepreneur, like the marketing practices and how you were able to push and grow your business? Talk us through that process of what you learned.
Yeah, so the unconventional entrepreneur, it started off as, Googling. Basically, I went to college, but college doesn't teach you, they teach you what I call traditional entrepreneurism. So like
Hmm.
it's basically what the textbook says. There's a difference
Yeah.
between academia and practitioner. The academia world's going to teach you what the research says and what the textbook says. The practitioner world is going to teach you the actual hands-on and what works in practice. And not to say that what academia says works does or doesn't work in practice, but practitioner is you literally learn by doing. So
Right.
so I an unconventional entrepreneur first is more when it comes to traditional and or academia and practitioner, they're more towards the practitioner, right? Um, because I had to learn all by Google and by hands-on experience. So that's kind of where it started. I will say that going through all of this, yeah, like when I needed money and I'm like, I need to come up with a couple $100 in like 2 days or 3 days. I've got to find a way. Like I started looking at, because you got to pay to play. Everyone knows that too. And even back then, and what that means, for those of you who may not know what that means, is like you can't just start a business and then think that's it. Like you have to pay, you have to funnel money into it. So if you think about the situation that I was in and like literally not having money, but knowing that I needed this business to survive and having to pay to play. I mean, I'm online, I'm on Facebook, Googling different Facebook, like different people who do advertising. And like, I have $50. I really need all of this for my home and for my family. But if I took $10 of this 50, can I turn this $10 into 20 or 30 within 2 days by using Facebook marketing and conversions? And in most cases, I was able to do that. So like, but it's a risk, right? I mean, it's
Hmm.
especially when you're in that situation, it doesn't seem like $10 is a lot, but it is a lot when you have nothing.
Yeah.
So that's really kind of where it started. I started getting more strategic with it. I've always been unconventional in everything that I've done with life and business and everything, but I really started putting a practice to it. And then just as I started realizing, hey, like, you can really make a lot of money if you strategize and like find your niche and find ways to do it. I just snowballed that into different ways, different practices, different strategies to really fast track that. Because for me, it was like throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what stuck, right? So now you don't have to do that if you have a blueprint. So that was kind of my way into the unconventional entrepreneur, especially teaching it. I've got online courses, and the book was I need to get a blueprint because this is crazy. Like it's crazy having to figure it out on your own. So yeah, that's when I put it into practice more. When I realized, hey, the money that can come from this and how quickly it can come from it. And I've learned this. A lot of people will be like, well, I'm not telling anybody because I want to.
Hmm.
But for me, it's like there's so much money to go around, like share it with the world. Write a book about it and create an online academy and just teach women or men everywhere how to do it.
Yeah, I love that. I think that, right now I'm actually building a motherhood and business course and membership. And the person I'm learning from has a course and membership for mothers and business. And she's like, listen, all of this is here for you. She's like, I don't look at you as competition. I look at you as a colleague. And I want to help you succeed because that helps me succeed too. She's
Yeah.
like, I am at that place where I know that there's plenty for everyone. And I think that mindset and that flow of energy and mindset is nothing but good. And I
Yes.
love that you live that and that you've shown that through writing this book. So specifically, if you could point to one thing of how you shifted into that, because you said, marketing practices and Facebook ads, what was it that changed in your business specifically? Like, what were you doing now to create that shift in your business?
So there were two reasons. One was more of I don't know if selfish is the word, but selfish reason. And another was an opportunity to help others. So at first, the main reason is because, and you probably know this being on Instagram and
Mm-hmm.
other social sites, you cannot put all your eggs in someone else's basket. So, if you're
Yeah.
putting your eggs in Instagram's basket, Facebook basket, Pinterest, whatever, TikTok, if they decide to close you down, you're done. Like I've seen people
Yep.
lose their business overnight and it's devastating. Talking six figures, lose their Instagram account and they're done. They have no job now.
So sad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like it gives me chills to even think about. There is insurance out there for that. Thank the Lord now for
Mhm.
people. I just found that out the other day. But this happened to my friend, and I was like, I need insurance on this, and they do have it for influencers, but it happens. So I was like, I obviously need to grow the blog more. I need, and I do well with the blog, but I need another branch to make money. And so I was like, well, I've got this knowledge. I mean, I've been doing this for 10 years now. Yeah, I started in 2012 and I've gone into branding a cosmetic line, ended up branding a clothing line, opened a brick and mortar stores, did open online stores, had a blog, I have a blog, I've done all these different things. And I thought I can package this up and create a course and several courses like how to do blogging, or I've got one on how to launch your own brick and mortar retail store that teaches you how to do commercial contracts and all of that. I thought I've done all of this. I can put this into an online academy and start teaching women. And the other part of me was I have so many people that are coming up anyway, like that'll reach out and be like, hey, I'm in the area. Can we go get coffee? And I'm meeting people this way. I'm like, sure, I'll go get coffee and chatting with them. And I thought there's so many people that are asking these questions. The number one thing to making a product or innovating is to answer the questions of your demographic. And the questions of
Mhm.
my demographic and people that follow me, they're generally women in corporate world, mothers, stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home wives that just want to fuel their life with passion. They don't want to think in their head, is this it? Is this what I'm going
Mhm.
to be doing forever? And so they see my story and they want to do something like it. And I'm like, yeah, of course you can. So that was the other reason that I kind of segued in. So when COVID happened, and you said something earlier that is so true because before COVID, it was really, I feel like it was harder to get into the blogging and influencer world because it was like all the OGs in there and like people like us that have been doing it for a long time. It was kind of like we had, I won't say all of the brands, but we were a big chunk of the market as far as
Mhm.
working with larger brands. When COVID happened, it was like the biggest opportunity. It was different from 2008 because people were furloughed or lost their jobs, unfortunately, or were working from home. And they're literally all they have is this computer in front of them and social media. It's
Mhm.
literally the only thing you can do to I mean, not the only thing, but one of the only things you can do
Yeah. Yeah.
to keep yourself occupied. So people started like creating new accounts. I've seen people go insanely like popular within a year's
Mhm.
time. And
Yeah.
so it's now is the time. If you want to do it, you can. And that's the thing too. I thought with my course and my book, I'm like, now's the time. I've been helping women for the past 10 years, but I need to like fast track this and get this book out, get this course done because like people need to hop on this opportunity right now before everything kind of goes back to normal. Like
Mhm.
you got to know when to play the card and now's the time.
Oh, I love that. Well, this has been so helpful. I think that you and I are so much in line with that, where I want more than anything for mothers specifically, especially to know that there can be purpose fueling your day and also to bring income in too. I think that that is such a beautiful thing that there is so much opportunity. And I love that you've built this course and this book. Please tell everyone where they can connect with you online.
Okay, you can go to my blog is citychicliving.com. And there is a link. My book is right here. There's a link to my book on the blog. And you can order it there. And my Instagram is alexandra.nicole. And
Perfect.
and for the online academy, if anyone's interested in checking that out, I'm about to launch the another large course that goes along with the book, hopefully by the end of next week. It's learnunconventional.com.
Oh, I love it. Well, this has been so awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure. And for everyone listening, please go ahead and follow along with Alexandra and leave a rating and review. We want to hear from you. If you have specific people you want to be on the show, let us know. Every time you touch out and reach out to me on a DM, I love it so much. So let's stay connected, and I will see you next week. If you are listening to today's episode and thinking, what can I do to start a business today? Or I am so overwhelmed, I need your help. Well, I am here to help you. This is Camille, the host. And of course, as you know, I have my 60 Days to VA program where I actually help you as a stay-at-home mom create a business that you love using the hours that you have to give. Now, this is morphed into something new where I'm actually connecting busy entrepreneurs with my graduates of 60 Days to VA. And I'm helping to grow entrepreneurs' businesses by giving them the ability to have more freedom and more white space. So if you are looking for coaching in building a business or helping you to grow a business, please reach out to me at camillewalker.co under coaching services, and I'd love to help you grow as well. Hey CEOs, thank you so much for spending your time with me. If you found this episode inspiring or helpful, please let me know in a comment and a 5-star review. You could have the chance of being a featured review on an upcoming episode. Continue the conversation on Instagram at Call Me CEO Podcast. And remember, you are the boss.